Hi, I'm Cindy Abbott Letro. Behind the camera, we'll talk today to Greg Lamberson, who has been talking to production assistants about what that job entails. But Greg is someone that has made films and written books and done just about everything there is to do, I think, in how to make a film. Tell me a little bit about, how you got into what you do, because you are really a professional production assistant, among other things.
I consider that the least of my my resume slots, but well, I'm from the area. I grew up in Dunkirk, Fredonia. I grew up loving monsters, and that led to horror films, but science fiction films, all types of films. I moved to New York City in 1982 to go to film school. I went for a year, and then at the time there were a lot of midnight movies playing around New York City, and a lot of sort of amateur productions that were getting theatrical releases, the types of films I wanted to do. So I didn't go back to film school for another year, and I started working on that type of film for free, and 2 years later made my first film.
You really wanted to do this if you were doing it for free.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I've been doing it for over 30 years, and there have been long, long dry spells. And I have a family, and it's not easy, but this is what I'm here to do, and I'm not giving up.
Well, I would like to get your impression about what's been happening in this region, because we had a whole, a studio full of 60 kids that all want to get into films. They want to be production assistants. I mean, what kinds of things can they expect, and is there work for them here?
Well, it's much better than it was. I made my fourth film, which was my first film in Buffalo in 2009, and things were not in place yet. There was no infrastructure, but there were pockets of people doing different types of professional work. And I saw then that there was the interest. And I will tell you that since 2009, I've really had two dreams. One is to make my living doing my own films, but another is to build a film industry here. And fortunately, there are other people in the area who have that same dream. Now, often we work together on projects, like when films come out of town, we hire on them. But there is a dedicated group of people here who want to see films being produced here. And this just happened to coincide with the technological advance of digital filmmaking, which makes films more inexpensive, but also it makes it possible for local filmmakers to do their own work. And it coincides with the tax credit that we've heard so much about, the production tax credit, which is bringing film work to town. And it has exploded since 2009. The one drawback is that because of our area, typically it's a seasonal business. September and fall are when people want to shoot, except for when Fred Olen Ray comes to town to do a Christmas movie. Right. The winter films are few and far between. So the people who make their living doing crew work, if they want to make their living year-round, they often have to travel during the off-season.
But you have been very lucky, and I don't want to demean or whatever, but to be a production assistant. But that is such a key, it's a key entry-level position, but it's also so critical to a film.
It is, and it's how people learn the nuts and bolts of working on a set. You have to start somewhere. And they're essential. And when a film comes to town, very often they bring their keys, the key department heads, with them. They're people that the filmmakers have worked with, so they don't want to hire local people for the key positions. They want to hire them for the assistant positions, sometimes in those departments, and they want to hire them to be production assistants, just like extras. That's where the local people can come in, and that's how you gain your entry. That's how you meet like-minded people and people who can hire you on other shows. I do my own films, but I often also work as what's called a line producer or a production manager or a first assistant director on films that come to town. And then I'm in a position to recommend people for some of these positions. So networking really is key. And frankly, everyone who holds a department head position knows the local people they want to work with and try to bring them onto the show with them.
It seems as if we're getting a lot of sort of return business. What is it that's happening here? I mean, and I hope continues to happen, that is bringing people back.
My first big show in this town was working for Chris Olen Ray, Fred Olen Ray's son. I know you interviewed both of them. Chris hired me on to be an assistant director. They came to this town specifically because they wanted to shoot in an airport. They found an available location at the Niagara Airport, which Tim and Rich helped them get. When they were here, Chris saw so much architecture in this area that he recommended it to his father, Fred, who's in his staff. Chris is a producer, Fred is a producer and a director. Fred's directed some 60 films. Fred, it has now gotten to the point where Fred comes to town while he's shooting a film, he's location scouting for the next script he's going to write.
Right.
He is writing scripts tailored for the Western New York area, whether they're set in Buffalo or not. Sometimes we substitute for other cities, which is fine. But people come here and they see we're the 20-minute city. You can get from an urban area to a rural area in 20 minutes. There is a decent crew base. When I was a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles came, and on that one I was just doing crowd control. I was up on the 33 asking people politely to step back. The production people could not believe the number of people working as production assistants who had directed their own feature films. I mean, there were like 6 or 8 of us. So, I mean, the interest is here, the passion's here, and now the experience is coming.
What would you, if you were going to give advice to those people that are in power to make this a true film industry working in Buffalo, what do you think is the key thing that we need to do?
Well, I will tell you that our film commission, which is Tim Clark and Rich Wall, and Mayor Brown, and I assume the town supervisors around.
Right,
I mean, I don't know all of them by name.
Our county executive,
right.
And I think up in Niagara Falls gives some money too.
They have been doing an extraordinary job welcoming films to come to town, and they don't charge for permits like a lot of cities do. I mean, that's usually the first thing that surprises people when they come to town. Oh, I don't have to allocate $8,000 for these permits. They are welcoming and friendly to these outside productions. I mean, they're doing what they can. I think we'd all like to see more resources devoted to them. I think a 2-man team of Rich and Tim are doing an extraordinary job, but they are understaffed. They need some help. Mm-hmm. It's time for them to have a little team of people who can help them, because there's so many films coming to town.
Well, I noticed what you said too about the fact that for people that want to be involved in this is not a 9-to-5 job.
No, it's not.
It's crazy. Usually, like Ninja Turtles, that was when everybody else is at home. That's when they were shooting.
Yeah, we shot at night on Ninja Turtles, and that's a union show, so they were pretty strict on it being a 12-hour day, I think. Sometimes days can be 14 hours or 15 hours. And we would spend a couple of hours just sitting in the tent waiting to be up, but then we would spend the next 10 hours standing on pavement, and that is brutal, brutal on your feet, standing on pavement all day for 10 days.
But your aspirations, you talked about being a production assistant, but you have made your own films. Mm-hmm. What do you see? What would you like to do personally that would be the hallmark for you?
Well, I spent a lot of my career making micro-budget films that cost anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000. Last year, I finally made my first big film, which was $250,000, which enabled me to hire a 30-man crew. And when you're begging people for favors to help you out on weekends or late at night, to do the best they can, they got to feed their families too. It's nice when you finally reach the point where you can pay them an actual rate and bring them on. And my shoot went well, and everyone had a great time. And I know all those people that I have spent years working with on other shows and asking for favors, I was really able to put together the top team that I wanted, and I can't wait to do something else with them. I'd like to be able to make a film every year. I mean,
that's great. That's great. We're lucky to have you here. We're lucky that you gave your time to talk to all these kids and tell them the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful about being a production assistant.
I think it's very important not to paint everything with roses, and let people know you got to be ready for those blisters and those long hours, and to be standing outside in the rain, to know what to expect going in.
You're proof of it. Thank you for talking with me. And we'll see you next time on Behind the Camera.